He wanted to demonstrate that you could make great chocolate without exploitation or using child labor in the process. And that's how Tony's was born. And so his name, Toon van de Koken, Tony colloquially. Tony's Chocolonely represents the journey of one man to change the industry from within. Tony's lonely journey within chocolate, Tony's Chocolonely. And so our mission is really to focus on ending exploitation in cocoa. You will hear anyone at Tony's talk about that we are an impact company that makes chocolate, not the other way around. Because the impact starts at the very beginning with the farmers in West Africa, in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, where we are committed to ensuring that we are paying a fair price. We are helping to create an ethical and fair way of producing chocolate. The actual Tony's that you see here is the byproduct of that. The impact is at the beginning, not the end. And as I said, this is what we're focused on, maniacally focused on, day in, day out. I've been with the company a year and a half, and I can tell you that one of the best gifts is that all of my colleagues, when we're around the table, it always comes back to this. It is the lowest ego culture that I've ever been a part of, because this is our number one focus. And so when you have a mission this audacious and this big to change an industry and set a new norm, you say, how do you go about that? And these are the three pillars that we come back to. You've got to create awareness. So think about where we started. How many of you raised your hand and said that you knew the story or knew that there was exploitation in cocoa, right? You are the awareness. You can't do something if you don't know anything about it. And then the second one is our responsibility to lead by example. And you see that by proving that you can. I mean, we're a little guy comparative to all of the bigger brands out there. So if we can do it, surely the broader industry can do it. So we always say lead from the front. And then last, inspire to act. We do not want to be on this journey by ourselves. There's no way we can fundamentally set a new standard or change the industry alone. And you'll see some examples later of how we encourage and invite people to the table, even if we're competing with them.
Probably some of you are sitting there for some big multinational brands are thinking, I don't have a Tony. I don't have an investigative journalist. What the hell am I going to do? Why is this relevant? What I love about this is that you got a commodity product that dares to talk about something bigger than the product. Mm-hmm. I think we live in a time where it's so difficult to cut through on any platform out there and social, etc. So you've got to get people to talk about something that people actually truly cares about. Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, most of us doesn't really care about a hygiene pad that make you dance all night. So we need to find something bigger, whether it's women empowerment, mm-hmm. whether it's unfair practice in a chocolate industry. So often it's about finding that Achilles heel in an industry, mm-hmm. and use that as your sword. One of the key questions I always hear again and again is the authenticity one, the transparency one. So how are you guys dealing with some of these things that people might be saying, okay, is this real? Is this milk chocolate? Is this what's going on? How do you make sure that you live this?
Yeah, I would tell you, so as I said, I've been with the company now a year and a half. If you can't tell, I'm American with my lovely accent up here. And I would say it sounded good. And really in being in the company, it is very real. And I have some examples to show you. When we talk about being a transparent brand, we're almost like on the edge of radical transparency to the point where I've been uncomfortable as the person leading the brand of, are we sure we want to say that? Yes? Okay. We are an impact company. And you find those moments where I'm uncomfortable, but if you think about the mission, and for you all to sit here and to believe me, and for me to earn the credibility, we don't have a choice to be anything but transparent. And that's transparent in many ways. I'll share with you some examples. First one up that you'll see is we recently did a post where, we get a lot of hate in our comments. We get a lot of love, but we get a lot of hate. And we also just get a lot of questions where people are curious and there's a lot of greenwashing, a lot of people saying a lot of things and people challenging us on it. And so we had our head of global scaling, who's on the open chain side and really helping to take the mission to as many places as possible, answering some of the questions in the comments. You
just lost 2 chocolate bars, guys. Sorry.
How much? At Tony's, we really believe in paying the farmer priced for cocoa that enables a living income. So that means consumers helping us pay that bill. I once snapped my nail off trying to break a piece of Tony's chocolate off, and I've never forgiven them. Heard, sorry, my grandma used to say the same. Didn't you all find 1,544 children working in your supply chain? Y'all weird for shoe? Do people actually write like that? Yes, we report very transparently about how many cases of child labor we find every year. It's really core to what we do. As weird as it sounds, we're happy to find the cases because if we don't find the cases, we can't remediate them. So finding cases and remediating them, closing those cases as fast as possible is core of what we do and how we're going to reduce child labor prevalency in cocoa down to 0%.
I love that example because it's like most companies always talk about transparency, but and then transparency is apparently publishing it as some CSR sustainability report on a website where nobody's coming.
Yeah.
I think making it sort of social, snackable,
and
easy
owning
for
it.
people to consume, and owning the challenge. I mean, the one around being honest about child labor in a supply chain from a brand who actually has that as its mission. It's for me is
that's radical, and I think there can be confusion when you are mission driven or purpose driven that you're perfect. Right? And there's this it's being misconstrued of like, well, you say your mission is to end exploitation in cocoa. Well, look, gotcha. Look at that exploitation there. You've got child labor. And we're like, whoa, we are not perfect. We look for the child labor because if we find it, then we're actually able to do something about it. And we focus much more on the remediation of being able to identify it, remediate it, and keep children out of the supply chain. So this isn't about saying, we don't have any issues and we're perfect. It is about saying it does exist. We are doing something about it, and there are ways to solve this. That's how we're going to drive the change and create lasting change, not hiding behind and creating a veneer of perfection as if these things don't exist. And I don't know about you and where you may work, but are you at a place that is willing to be radically transparent about not being perfect? And I think just as humans or consumers, like we're not perfect. So I don't think we always have the expectation for brands or companies to be perfect. We do expect them to be transparent, honest, and authentic in communicating those things. And something a little, on the other side of that, this is the one I was like, oh, we're going to tell them we're raising our prices. I mean, we are all consumers. Like, we are not dummies. We are at the shelf and we can, I think that tire, that did not cost that much last week or last month, right? We're very smart, but how many brands actually tell you they're raising their prices? Better yet, how many tell you they're doing it and why they're doing it? Again, that radical transparency. We're very straightforward on all of our socials. You would have seen us say, we're raising our prices. And let me tell you why we're raising our prices. Some of you may not even realize cocoa prices are up almost like 300%, and they're all over the board. And our ability to drive change at this scale, we need to have the funds to be able to continue to pay farmers a living income reference price and do things in the right way. And part of that is needing your support in order to do that. And we hope if we're honest and transparent along the way and we keep giving you great chocolate, you stay on the journey with us throughout that.
I think there's two takeaways already. One thing is sort of being mission focused, finding that mission, something that might be the Achilles heel of an industry. That's what built a lot of other big brands. Secondly, the transparency piece, which is not just about transparency, make it simple. The third thing I think a lot of brands are sort of grappling with is how much should just be product marketing? How much should we run around and throw out these bars here to a guy who's texting hopefully his girlfriend or partner or whatever, or your mother hopefully, while you should be listening to us and learning something in marketing. But so one thing is product marketing, the other thing is really the mission. What is it we can get people to talk about? How do you, because coming from quite a different company, PepsiCo, that often is a little bit more of a product marketing machine. How do you sort of grapple with that challenge today in Tony's, and how also just internally do you rally for these things? How much product, how much mission?
Yeah, I will tell you in a moment of transparency, it was one of the, I'd say, first conversations and coming in the first 6 months to the company. We have done a tremendous job, or I'd say before, all the others before me have done a tremendous job of talking about our mission and leading with that. Again, we're trying to end exploitation in cocoa. That's our North Star. That's what we're focused on. So much of our comms or things we put out in the world would lead with that mission. I could ask all of you and myself, when I'm at the shelf and I'm like, I just need some chocolate, like it's been a hard day, I'm not thinking about, oh, what's the mission of that brand and the mission of that brand? I'm just looking for something like, oh, I want it to be crunchy, I want it to be creamy, I want it to be delicious. And we really almost shied away from talking about how good the chocolate is because, maybe there is a fear, we had a concern that if we started talking about the chocolate, we might forget to talk about the mission and come back to our why. And I think that's fair. And what I'd say is it's a balance. We're never going to lose sight of the mission. We have to ensure that that always remains a part of our story. But we will not be able to win the hearts and minds of consumers if we don't tell you all how good the chocolate is. And it's freaking phenomenal. So we got to figure out, ways to do both. And what I tell you is in a different company, I've worked in, CPG and food and beverage for a lot of my career. You might see that as a constraint of like, oh, we got to talk about that. I would say at Tony's, we look at that as how can we catch lightning in a bottle? Not like, oh, do I talk about product or do I talk about mission? How can we bring those two together? And when we do it and we catch lightning in a bottle, the world goes crazy. And there's just something so special about those moments, and we see the consumer reaction. We see it in so many other ways. Did anyone here buy an advent calendar this past holiday from us? It's fine if you didn't. Yeah, a couple people.
That's a couple there, yeah.
Encourage you to buy one next season. They're a lot of fun. But there's a lot of advent calendars out there. The one thing that we do differently is that there is a chocolate missing in one of the days. So that pisses off a lot of people. We hear about it. Thank you for your feedback. And we tell you why the chocolate is missing out of that window. And the reason why is because the cocoa industry is unequally divided. And so that is a fundamental concept of why we are fighting to set a new standard and a new norm. We try to bring that across in every way possible. And if I can disrupt you in your day and piss you off that you write, and then you learn like, oh, wow, you didn't give me that chocolate because you're trying to give me this information so I'm more aware. We actually see a lot of people like, you pissed me off, but I'm so happy you did that because now I know, and now I can do something about it. And so I think, finding those ways to balance both of those, that's the magic. You also see over here what Thomas has in our bar.
If you want to piss off your partner, this is the best way to...
Yeah, why be equally divided? Nothing's equally divided in cocoa. You've got our bar like that. You've got other ways of just really cheeky copy of like, it takes balls to end exploitation in chocolate. This was a new innovation last year that we launched in smaller snackable form. I saw this this advertisement just as I was joining the company, and I was like, oh, they said balls? Like, what? Is that okay? And again, when you're trying to capture attention and build this awareness, you got to use whatever you can to stop people and make them take notice. And there's big ways and smaller ways to do that. It's through our partnerships, where we created an entire collection of ice cream and chocolate bars. There's one up here, some lucky person's gonna get, with Ben & Jerry's of two mission-driven companies coming together, where the 1 + 1 gives you 3. Some of you may have seen this. Again, we need to lead by example and show what is possible. In Germany, we had a campaign where we created some fan favorite lookalikes and taste-alikes to show it is possible to create this without exploitation in the process. And in doing so, we upset, someone along the way that did not want to talk about exploitation in the industry, but wanted to have a different conversation. And so we had that conversation. And you can see here that, they maybe wanted to talk about lawyers, and we wanted to talk about farmers and exploitation.
But and I think that touches on another important point, which I think we forget in all this tech, AI, channels, all this stuff that sometimes makes me really tired on behalf of our industry, because we forget the creativity. What is it in fact that sort of drives that punch in the market? And that is sort of daring to do some of this stuff, going up, showcasing some of the not so great things competition is sometimes doing. But looking at some of this stuff, because we had a conversation before we went on stage where we said, most of the time, this is something I've seen again and again, it's not that, you know, most brands are themselves the worst enemy, just because they're awful buyers of advertising, because they don't want to buy great creative campaigns.
Yeah.
Where do you put that sort of boundary? Because how bold is bold? I would say that a lot of brands, FMCGs that I worked with, wouldn't have dared to do this.
Agree.
Yeah. So
I don't know if I would have made this decision if I wasn't at Tony's. And so I think there's something incredibly freeing and focused when your mission is so clear. And I want to make the point, like, we absolutely do things responsibly. This isn't about being jerks and about like poking people and like, look at how bad they are. It is not about that. It is about building awareness and bringing it back to that this is happening in the industry. We want consumers to be aware of this. We want to demonstrate it's possible to do things another way and lead by example. And sometimes you have to be willing to find the line and to be courageous in those conversations to get people to pay attention. Even if it's getting on the bad side of some of the big folks. We want them to pay attention as well, but we want them to pay attention while also extending a hand and inviting them into the conversation. We don't win if we are pissing people off and keeping them out. That is not the intention. So it's very important that as we're finding the line and being bold and we're not doing it for clicks, it all comes back to that why. Is this in service of raising awareness on the mission? Is this in service of like helping people be more informed about their choices?
If it's your mom, take it.
Yeah, we've got chocolate for her too. And it's even, you know, Thomas, to your point of like, we are really good at newsjacking and finding things happening out there and being creative in the moment, right? A lot of the best creativity isn't something, you know, at an 8-month timeline that's perfectly planned out. And it's like, are you paying attention to what's happening in culture? And if you're clear on who you are and what you're doing, it allows you to tap into these moments. You know, Cadbury had a fantastic execution and activation around their packaging. Great. We also took that as an opportunity to highlight what Thomas held up to you as like, our bar's unequally divided for a reason. So it's a great way to get in on the conversation in a responsible way while also raising awareness. And so do you have moments like that where you sit in your companies and your brand where you're paying attention to the conversations your consumers are having or that are happening on social to figure out and know when you have an opportunity to jump in and you're adding value either to that conversation or in service of your mission? And if
that's also because you have that like brave culture at heart that you dare to do some of this stuff. And I think probably that is
encouraged. It's like encouraged to go be bold. My boss, one of my favorite human beings, is my CEO. And he's probably the one that puts the most like knock on the door like Sadira, like, yeah, we can be bolder. We had a conversation as a marketing leadership team. We
don't hear that a lot in advertising.
Yeah, that's why I got to give him his, you know, give him his flowers, because it's not just him, it's not just me. As a collective company, it's almost a bit of the pressure of, you know, Tony's is a bold brand. We're challenging a norm. You can't change an industry and be tepid. You can't be safe and change an industry. Point to me in history where someone played it safe and they were able to drive radical change.
And talking about changing an industry, because I think a lot of brands might be shying away from exploitation, these big topics, palm oil, whatever it might be that some of these brands have in their supply chain, Apple, others. And a lot of this is systemic stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff that a small chocolate company like you guys can't do by yourself.
No.
So how do you go about? You had the transparency piece that, yes, there are also child exploitation in your supply chain.
Yeah.
How do you go about the bigger challenge? How do we solve this?
Yeah. Well, what's the saying? If you want to go fast, go alone. Go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Did I get it right? I'm looking at head nods. Something in the vicinity, right?
You always need to have a quote in any key.
Yeah,
There always needs to be a quote.
Yeah, isn't that like on the checklist?
Some proverb somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
Check, done.
Perfect. Yes.
We talk a lot about this, that we compete on shelf but collaborate on cocoa. And that is a radical thing to say, but when you are an impact company that makes chocolate, then it comes back to the mission and it's about driving the change, even if I got to do it with my competitors. And so we have Tony's Open Chain, which is our supply chain, where we have codified the 5 sourcing principles in service of ending exploitation in cocoa. And you know what we do? We say, we want all of you. If you are in cocoa or cocoa is in your supply chain, you can join Tony's Open Chain and commit to doing things a different way and source your cocoa beans through us. And we call these partners our mission allies. How many people are familiar or heard of Mr. Beast? It's a lot, media platform, shout out to Mr. Beast. But Mr. Beast in the United States was the fastest growing chocolate. Do you think me as the chief brand officer was like, yes, I absolutely want to invite in the front door the fastest growing chocolate brand? Probably not, but this is when you talk about, is it about the mission or is it about the brand? And this is where you say, I absolutely want my biggest competitor in the US sitting right beside me if we're going to change this industry. So Mr. Beast and Feastables is now a part of Tony's Open Chain. So we collaborate on cocoa and we compete on shelf. We also, it's not just brands like Feastables, it's also Waitrose. So we call this private label, store brands that are in chocolate that want to give you chocolate at an accessible price point of a good quality, also doing things in the right way. Last year, Waitrose joined Tony's Open Chain. So all of the chocolate that is made by Waitrose, they source their beans through Tony's Open Chain.
So any chocolate brands out there, you know what to do now. Join the Open Chain. We want to have a little bit of time for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah. We want an interesting question, not one of those, hey, I'm from this media company and my name is. Do say your name, do say the company you're from, but let's have an interesting question. And we might reward it with a book, a chocolate, whatever.
We've got
See
options.
it as a punishment and a reward. So let's get some interesting questions here, the tough ones.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Rupen from Thinkbox, trade marketing body for TV. Fantastic talk, brilliant. Really weird question. Where did you get your jumper? Because my wife would love that.
I told you. I was telling Thomas, this is like my dopamine sweater. It's like my very happy sweater. Luckily, my wardrobe matches the brand, and I didn't have to spend a lot of money. It is Pucci, if interested.
Oh, that's a good question. Why didn't you ask me about my clothes? I sound Dutch, but I'm Danish, so anyways, more or less the same. We all wear black and white, very, very boring.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Estona Adoha. I'm from a company called Keke Ads. I'm from Africa.
What part? That's Africa's a
West
big...
Africa. I'm from Nigeria.
Okay.
Lovely country.
West African continent.
Yes.
The cocoa you sell comes from the continent. Do you guys have a strategy for localized awareness within the areas that produce to reduce, for example, child labor? Do you guys spend a portion of your marketing budget reaching out to people in those communities where the farmers are, telling them about, the ills of child labor and how they can actually play a greater role? Or is all your budget spent in Europe on the consumer side?
Yeah, the great news is we have a phenomenal team on the ground in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. We have 20 mission allies. I'm looking at Alex somewhere. 20 mission allies, a lot of co-ops that work with, a lot of farmers on the ground there. And it's really that team building the word in the community. Tony's as a brand wouldn't be able to grow without more farmers coming on board, more co-ops coming on board and saying, yeah, we see the benefits of being a part of Tony's Open Chain. because as a part of our 5 sourcing principles, part of it is about paying a living income reference price. Part of it is investing in the farms and helping with the techniques to increase productivity. Part of it is committing to long-term contracts. So we have a lot of word of mouth and programs on the ground. Tony's Chocolonely Foundation, we give 1% of our revenue back to nonprofits in the communities in West Africa. So I'd say we are spreading the word, and we wouldn't be able to grow if there weren't more people coming into the supply chain.
Sorry,
Got to share.
Sorry. There's no more time for questions.
You can ask me afterwards.
You can ask afterwards, exactly. It was a very, very good question. You already got your chocolate bar. There's no second chocolate bar. That's how good it is, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so unfortunately, we're at the very end of this little deep dive. For those of you who might think in this bonkers world there might be something bigger on stake than just talking product, get mission-driven. Think about whether you can be transparent even about the bigger challenges. You cannot solve this, sorry the language, shit alone.
That's right.
Think if you can collaborate. Be bold. I mean, in my 20 years of marketing, the only thing that has happened is ads have become worse. We've become worse marketeers. Let's try and find a little bit of that boldness, because the world needs bold marketeers right now. Yeah. People are not here to buy products. There's a lot of issues around in society that all of us have a responsibility, I believe, to solve. If you want to know more about the business case, I said, look at the walk report, look up my name. I'm happy to share that. It's a decade of the most advertising. So if you don't want to go down the nice track, go up to your boss and say, this is just more effective.
Yeah.
So it's a very compelling argument.
Everyone wants to be more effective.
Exactly. Sadira, thank you so much for sharing this amazing story with us here today. And if you have any more questions, Sadira and I are going to hang around. We might give out some more chocolates, books, whatever. And
only if you ask a good question.
Only
no free
interesting
chocolate.
questions. And probably you might get a second chocolate bar. Let's see. Thank you so much, guys. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.